Previously on Something Who. Welcome to the podcast where we take something old, a Doctor Who story from the original series, compare it with something new, one from the new series, and add something borrowed to make Something Who. Hello, I'm Richard, and we're back with Something Who podcast, where this time we're looking at two stories with masterly intent. Initially, we'll look at Third Doctor Out in Colony in Space from Season 8, and later we'll examine 10th Doctor story Utopia from Series 3. And with me to decide whether these stories have colonial style or require colonic irrigation, we have a fine gathering of pioneers. Starting with writer, board treader, and the man who knows everybody in fandom, Paul. Hello.
Yes, hello, good evening. Thank you for that glowing introduction.
Splendid. Next up, we have science and astronomy writer and occasional TV quizzer, Giles.
Evening all.
And finally, we've got model panellist, Lego enthusiast, and monitoring the northern outposts of our podcast colony, it's Rick.
Hey!
And so on to Utopia, which was written by Russell T Davies and directed by Graham Harper, the very same Graham Harper who was assistant floor manager on Colony in Space. Spoiling maybe one of our links later on, but there we go. I'm going to surprise you all by telling you that it's the second time that I've watched Utopia.
Good Lord.
The first
Really?
time being when it went out originally.
How did you resist? Everyone went mad for this at the time. How on earth did you resist the temptation to...
Possibly what happened here was that I was spoiled for the original Master reveal. And it was probably my own fault. I mean, if you are going to go and listen to podcasts, then, who knows what you're going to come up with. And somewhere along the line, I'd heard somebody say pretty much exactly what was going to happen in Utopia, presumably because they'd seen a script or leaked or whatever. So... although I enjoyed Utopia at the time, I was sort of kicking myself and thinking if I hadn't heard that, it would be an awful lot better. Because there are very few proper surprises in Doctor Who. But anyway, many years later, I got the opportunity to see the appearance of Joe Martin as the Doctor. And I feel like, okay, well, I've done that now. So I did have my proper moment of, I didn't see that coming, which I missed out on in this particular one.
I can't remember whether I was spoiled or not now. That's a shame, isn't it? I'm getting old. Can anyone else remember? Was this the one where the entire episode leaked, all the script or something? It was quite a big deal, wasn't it?
Apparently I think the Sun blabbed all over. Obviously they got some source that I think told them. And I remember I would have been on Galley Base at the time, or Outpost Gallifrey.
Yeah.
Whatever it was called in that particular incarnation. I think it was one of those things where I read it before my self-control kicked in.
Yeah.
But I had the slight I had the slight benefit of being so sceptical about it that I didn't really that I didn't actually believe it. So although I'd read it, I think I read more or less the whole idea. I just put it out of my mind for several months, and so when it came round, it came as a mix between a genuine surprise and oh, hang on, what? No, they're not really, are they? So, and yes, I rewatched it lots of times.
I just thought it was a good filler episode before the two-parter finale. I was completely taken aback by it all. Thrilling at the time.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, best way to be.
I remember it being thrilling, which is so it's odd that I can't remember whether or not I actually knew what was going to happen before I saw it. But I think the fact that I can't remember is a good thing, because it means it was so well made that even if I did know, it was still incredibly thrilling, and it's still thrilling now, that bit. I mean, that's the bit that we care about, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
That's the bit that's earned this story's reputation. At least I remember it having a very high reputation at the time. I don't know. Maybe Rick has got some poll information for us later, but wouldn't be surprised if it had dropped a bit over the years, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, I would say watching it this time, it is kind of what you described, Rick. It's a perfectly serviceable story, and and I enjoyed it, but it is all in service of that moment of reveal at the end. So if you know that's coming, it sort of loses some of the impact. But I enjoyed watching it again, and I thought there were some interesting aspects to the storytelling which we'll come to that I'd forgotten or that I wasn't expecting. It pulls out some interesting themes. So and very well acted. So I liked that too.
It does have quite a lot to get through, doesn't it? Which is why the story itself is fairly slight. I mean, it's got all that. It's got to reintroduce Captain Jack.
Yeah.
And get some exposition out of the way. The scene, whatever it is, 3/4 of the way through the episode, where he has everything slows down. He has his long chat with the Doctor. It's very typical Russell. That's very him. The way that he has the confidence to change the pacing at that point, but it works very nicely. And all the themes of the series there, even you can get a reprise of Martha's jealousy of Rose, and so it's got a self-imposed shopping list of things that it needs to do narratively. Pick up threads from earlier in the series and set up quite a few things that are going to come back in the next episode, not just the Master. It's possibly my favourite part of it is, the one thing, of course, that none of us realised at the time, is the revelation of what happens to the humans who escape triumphantly in their rocket, and the way it turns that on its head in the next story. I love that, and that gives it. So even though it loses some of its thrill power once you know who Derek Jacobi is from the start, it has other. There are some of the other strands gain in power on rewatches, so it all balances out.
I was delighted when I came to watch it to discover that John Barrowman hasn't been cancelled on the iPlayer, so I was able to watch it in all its glory. Yeah, I mean, the Doctor doesn't seem any more pleased to see him in this than some people have been in recent years, which seems rather unfortunate, because it doesn't feel like Jack deserves that kind of cold welcome.
Well, it's not his fault.
Definitely one of the odder parts of the episode, really.
He takes one look at the scanner and goes, "Oh God, it's Barrowman."
Yeah. And then when he finds Captain Jack at the other end of time, lying next to the TARDIS, he's really grumpy. I mean, I quite like a grumpy 10th Doctor. He's really grumpy without real cause. I know he sort of tries to explain it. Maybe it's because it's a reminder of his time with Rose, or he's wary of the fact that Captain Jack has this superpower. But none of those things really excuse abandoning him as he's running towards the TARDIS, or being grumpy to discover that he's with him in Utopia.
It's not really explained how the Doctor could possibly have known that Jack had not only not died, but had been reincarnated as an immortal being. It's a hell of a retcon. And because that was a strange loose end hanging at the end of Passing of the Ways. Yeah.
He does well to cling on to the TARDIS, Jack, given that Sutek's already doing that.
Maybe he's hanging on his tail.
Good point.
The other week we discussed about the name of the Doctor and how great intelligence had gone back in time and thwarted the Doctor at every turn. And then Clara come along to repair it.
Yeah.
So not only were we having Captain Jack clinging onto the TARDIS and Sutek clinging onto the TARDIS, we also had the great intelligence going back to thwart the Doctor, and then Clara going back again to unthwart it. There's a lot going on in this era.
Yeah, imagine what happens in some of those earlier Moffats. But anyway, so keep going, Rick, before I get sidetracked.
I was slightly underwhelmed by Jack Harness returning. I can see why he's a useful character for the writer to have for those final 3 episodes, and indeed, as contrived as it might be, his superpower is important for resolving an issue within this story. But it's not like returning companions normally in Doctor Who, where you haven't seen them for a while and there's a pang of nostalgia and how will they fit back into the show. We just had a whole year of Torchwood, and I felt that probably had given me about as much Captain Jack as I wanted in a calendar year. And I don't know how you guys felt about it, but it wasn't like a Sarah Jane return or a Tegan or an Ace returning. It was kind of like, oh, right, okay. It's the spin-off entwining itself into the main show again.
I didn't object to it at the time. I think my recollection of how I felt about it was like there were loose ends around it that clearly needed to be dealt with within the context of the main show, as it were, and like it felt like it was they were bound to get him back at some point, so it felt like it was unfinished business.
Yep,
that had to be.
I think I agree.
Had to be settled.
It always seemed demented to me the way it was handled at the time. Cause, like I say, it feels a bit odd in Parting of the Ways, but because it's all part of the melee at the end of the story, it's forgivable. But then he is literally never mentioned in the main show. In Christmas Invasion, the Doctor and Rose never talk about Jack, and it's covered in that little 15-minute that Children in Need thing. I think, is that right? I think.
Oh, what,
I mean, even there, it's only given a line.
The Born
Doctor
Again
says,
one.
"Oh, Jack will be fine."
Oh,
something nonsensical like that. So it does all seem very careless.
I'm trying to remember.
And the only behind the scenes reason we were ever given was that Jack he wanted the Doctor and Rose on their own so he could deal with the trauma of the regeneration, and Jack would have taken it in his stride, is what Russell said, but who knows? I mean, yes, maybe, but you can write it any way you like. I'm sure there must have been more to it than that. Whether it was just because you already knew he was going to spin off into Torchwood, or having written 5 episodes with a 3-person team, he changed his mind about it. Who knows? There could be any number.
Yeah, it does come
reasons.
up it does come up in that Children in Need thing. He dismissively says, "Oh, he's got plenty to do."
Well, I mean, not only that, but I think,
Earth.
Yes, exactly. That's the other massive hanging thread. What the hell? There's such devastation that's in Parting of the Ways that I just assumed that it was going to be a prime candidate for the big red. What's the word? Not redcon. Yeah, the big red. It was all a dream button, but
yes, yeah.
But no, it's left the case that Daleks really did.
Well, you can do that sort of thing in the year 200,000.
Yes.
Which you
200, 100.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's back.
Yeah, so talking about numbers, 100 trillion.
Yeah.
Is that a bit much, Giles?
Not necessarily. No,
okay.
Not for that.
I remember thinking it was at the time, and then at some point I looked it up and became aware of the fact that the long, protracted tail of the universe is going to be a bit different from the active phase. Right. So, is that right, Giles? That it's
yes,
as all the atoms are breaking down, as all the matter is breaking down into smaller and smaller molecules, it could take that long.
It's kind of exponential. You've then got to get to the point of what holds, so what's going to hold together planets for that long.
It's an intriguing philosophical idea and quite a scary idea that things will break down on a scale, both physically and temporally, that we literally... I mean, we think that the 13 billion years the universe existed is unimaginable, but, the length of time it's going to take...
That's just peanuts to space.
So it's a slightly terrifying idea. Yeah. And that is probably my biggest problem with it, because the idea that you go that far into the future and you still have humanoid figures is it's glossed over with exactly the same gag that Russell uses in End of the World. The planet, this is a classic Earth, he says. Even though it's however many billions of years it is in the future, the Earth looks like it does now because of the Galactic National Trust. So hilarious. But here, which in a more serious story it's the same joke. Well, it's not a joke, sorry, but it's the same explanation. Humanity has evolved into all sorts of different things over the billions and trillions of years, but they always revert to this shape. Fine, okay, yeah, I can sort of see that. But it just makes it... It's like people say when characters keep running into each other, like in Star Wars, the same characters keep meeting. It makes the universe seem too small. This makes the
world of Doctor Who turns out to be the master.
Seem too small. Yeah, seems small conceptually.
Hmm.
So there are two things I don't like about it. And I know it philosophically, Russell's trying to say something. He's trying to justify the importance of humanity. The fact that Earth and humanity is so important in Doctor Who because for production reasons, we have to give that a story reason. So yes, fair enough. The idea that we're the ones that survive to the end of the universe, that's quite neat if you it's fair and it's makes sense for the program, but you need a decent explanation. The thing that I really hate, not so much the humans, but the future kind. I mean, it's so the surviving humans and the idea that what we might evolve into beyond that should be something interesting and profound. It shouldn't be people with tattoos and fake joke shop teeth. They are so... I just hate that. I just hate them. They're so physical. They're so physical theatre. It's all. I hate the way they're realised. Gives actors an excuse to growl and throw their bodies into strange shapes. But just the concept is so unambitious. When you take us that far forward, and to a point that monumental, and that's all you can come up with, people and slightly scary people.
It feels a bit kind of survival-ish, except not as well realised, probably. Which is saying something with those cheetah costumes.
To an extent. So it's full of contradictions in terms of how far-flung in the future it is. The human race having survived pretty much like in a contemporary way. And the future kind, yeah. I agree. They're poorly realised, but then they're only playing a barely adequate role in the point of the story, and it's almost such a flimsy disguise for a story. They've gone with a flimsy disguise for the future kind. That's not the focus of the story. The focus of the viewer's attention is not really on them. It's on working through some of the continuity and the relationships around Jack, Martha, and then the slow build up to the master reveal. And when I watched this the other day, I was mulling it over in the car, the whole future kind element of it wasn't in my mind at all because I was just overwhelmed by reliving that master storyline. So perhaps you can get away with it if it's not fundamentally the purpose of the story.
I mean, yeah, I would just cut it out, and it brings me back to what Giles was saying about his preferred version of Colony in Space. It just seems like an archetypal example of how Doctor Who can sometimes let itself down when you think there has to, you can hear the ghost of JNT saying there has to be a monster in it. And what did there?
It's partly, I think, okay, it's not anything I'm going to sustain as an argument, or I don't particularly feel the... But I wonder whether there is some parallel to be drawn here with what's going on. Are the future kind meant to be some analogy? And there's the fact that, as you pointed out, Paul, given that it's supposedly a myth that they're what the humans will become, or they're the evolutionary future of the humans, and then when we get to the next story, we find out that the evolutionary future of the humans is far worse. And so whether there's something to be said for that, whether there's some parallels to be drawn between what's happened to Yana and when he becomes the master versus the humans, the relationship between the humans and future kind. Again, I don't know. I'm not saying it's stand it up, but I did start looking at it and was wondering whether there might be someone who had the time and energy to make that argument.
I just feel like when we've gone that far into the future and when you're dealing with a type of scientific ideas that are almost fantastical in themselves, you need we could have done with a really high concept threat. Possibly this would have been a time to pull one of those high concept things out of the bag, like in Midnight, for example. He's given us that.
Yes.
He's given us a really strong high concept idea and a story that's just about people on a bus. Whereas it might have been worth saving it for the end of the universe. The end of the universe. I expect more than just primords.
Yes, yeah.
But or maybe you could have brought the Toclophane in here. They're weird. They're a very strong idea, underrated, I think. Because we don't actually get to see them until the next story when they arrive in the present day. Although we if we've been paying attention, we get the idea that they are the future of humanity. If we'd seen them here, it might have set that up to be a rather stronger. We might have thought, what the hell are these?
Yes.
Talking of people on a bus, we've also seen that evolution of people in Orphan 55. Another potential future for the humans.
Please don't remind me of that. And the herbivores.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember what happens with. I'm just vaguely scanning, and no, I don't think there's anything particularly related to it at all. I was just trying to remember what happens in Hellbent, because the Doctor meet Ashilda at the end of supposedly at the end of the universe in some kind of little bubble that's been preserved through everything.
Yeah, they're supposed to be the last two, aren't they?
The ruins of Gallifrey, and yes, yeah.
Oh, great. Well, talking of bubbles, I mean, I was going to mention that earlier when we were talking about the fact that by the year 100 trillion, the universe doesn't have atoms anymore, let alone planets. It's one thing to say all the stars have all gone out, which we get again later in the Pandorica, which is, in the Pandorica, it's nonsense science, of course. Here, that would be true. But this one planet is protected by a bubble, which means the planet can exist without any kind of structure around it and have recognizably life on it. It's just why not? Why?
Yeah, well,
why would you take us there and show us something that could be from any other period in time except explicitly the one we're in? Oh, it drives me mad.
Well, this is the thing where I start thinking, okay, is there more than, because this isn't Utopia, this is Malcasaro or whatever, isn't it? So, and obviously, Utopia, as we all know, being the beneficiaries of a classical education or whatever, means no place, literally. And that was the whole point of the original satire, as it were, and political philosophical exercise, was that it was a non-existent place. And I do rather wonder. I was looking at there's the bit where after Yana's become the master, and he pops out the thing that's got the map, and shakes his head and goes, "Oh, Utopia," and says Utopia or whatever.
Can you remind me what Oh, sorry. Remind me what the humans' plan is. Where do they think they're going? Is it a physical place? They're not trying to get through. In my head, I thought they were. I drifted off at that point. I thought they were trying to get through into the next universe or something, but that's not.
Somebody sent them a message saying, "Come to Utopia, it's lovely."
Right. Okay.
So it's a bit like Butlins, I think.
And that's the top. Right. Okay.
Call came from across the stars over and over again. Come to Utopia. Science Foundation created the Utopia project thousands of years ago to preserve mankind, to find a way of survive. To find a way of surviving beyond the collapse of reality itself. Now, perhaps they found it, perhaps not, but it's worth a look. Is what Yana's saying when he's still Yana.
The reveal of the rather lame Yana acronym, which, of course, is a reminder that Russell has always loved a lame acronym, even before the SUTEC days. It's slightly bungled. It comes too late because by the point at which Martha says, "Remember the face opposed message, you are not alone," we already know that this is a Time Lord. So it should have come slightly earlier. So it doesn't have as much power then as it would have done if we'd got the "You Are Not Alone" reminder before the fob watch thing, just to point. I'm slightly obsessed with the timing of reveals. You can so easily fumble the ball at the last minute in a story when you've carefully kept a secret up until this last minute, and then you don't quite explain it at the right point.
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of the build up to the reveal, when you watch it again, I can't suspend my disbelief. And really what I'm watching out for is how sledgehammer the references are that this is coming. And you wonder, how did I, first time around, ever not see this coming? Because it's just beat after beat, no pun intended, beat after beat after beat, teasing you into every time there's something about time and space and Time Lords and the TARDIS and things like that, Yana is reacting, and
Yeah.
But it's still a pleasure to watch Derek Jacobi react and react and react through that process. It's a fun watch.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm thinking to myself as that's going on, what's Martha doing talking about the fob watch, But then I guess she doesn't know he's the master, so maybe it's all right.
She seems to think, unless I'm misremembering, that it could be a good Time Lord.
Yeah.
I can't remember if there's another story I'm mixing this up with. She goes to the doctor and tells him as if he's going to be excited, and the doctor has to make a point of saying, well, it could be, would he say the wrong Time Lord? It could be, it might not be one of the good ones. Presaging what we get at the end of the next series, where they really throw the Time Lords under the bus. And reveal they weren't worth saving after all, because they'd all gone bad by the end. But I think this is the first step down that path.
Yeah, no, she's convinced it's a good thing, because the doctor's not giving them anything else to go on. And as is sadly typical of the way he treats Martha throughout.
Yes, she's so poorly treated. I like her character a lot. I think it was really well acted. But the scripts never do her any favours. And that once you know what's going to happen, you watch her in that fob watch scene, and you just think, "Oh, this is it is a car crash in slow motion." And don't do it, and for all the right reasons, and her loyalty to the Doctor, and her thinking how great this would be for the Doctor, that she only sees the upsides. She ends up messing things up, and that seems very unfair for a character that is just so likable.
To think about what the new audience, the new young fans would have thought at the time. I mean, they didn't know about the Master, or the whole idea there might be evil Time Lords presumably have been completely... It's not set up, is it, or prefigured in any way? So that it might have been an even bigger surprise to them. How is it set up in Gridlock when they discussed the Face of O's message, "You are not alone"? I just remember the Doctor very bitterly saying, "No, I am." He can't have meant that. It can't be true. But he doesn't. That's all we get, I think. So maybe all the young fans would have been as excited as Martha and say, "Oh, goody, the Doctor's going to get a friend."
And that's the thing. The Doctor is, what the Doctor's given Martha to go on at the end of Gridlock, when he finally opens up. All he basically tells her, once upon a time version of the Time War, my people fought a race called the Daleks for the sake of all creation, and they lost. Everyone lost. They're all gone now. My family, my friends, even that sky. Oh, you should have seen that little planet. And goes on to silver trees and two suns, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And fade up abide with me.
It doesn't tell her about the Mrani or the meddling monk or the master or the war chief or any of them. Yeah.
And it's only when she says, "But that's brilliant, isn't it?" And he says, "Yeah, depends which one." About whether there's if there's another Time Lord back. But fantastic. Yeah. So that is really the only hint.
How many audio flashbacks do we get? Because I feel like I was told that there were several, but all I can ever hear is Delgado. I can't hear this Ainley chuckle that people talk about.
There's an Ainley chuckle.
Well, maybe there's something wrong with my TV then.
And I'm talking of things that are wrong with TV. I'll come back to that. Oh, I presume there's that line he says himself, and I'm just trying to think about them.
There was also supposedly something that Eric Roberts had recorded, but it didn't get full clearance from all the TV movie shenanigans of licensing.
Great.
But there's a lot of flashback in this story. It really is another one of those RTD sort of reflective stories as well, which is really pulling together, joining the dots from right at the start of the new series. You get the Christmas invasion, flashbacks.
Yeah.
You get the references to Canary Wharf
Mm.
and the death, apparently, of Rose Tyler.
Mm.
It stitches a number of elements of that year together quite well. That the You Are Not Alone, as we've just been discussing, from Gridlock, the Chameleon Arch, it will be fresh in everybody's minds from Family of Blood. It weaves that all together quite well, and sometimes I don't like actually seeing a flashback. I think it breaks up the flow of the narrative, but it's pretty nicely dropped in during this episode. So yeah, last time we spoke, we were talking about, or I was talking about, how I viewed Name of the Doctor as quite similar to Utopia. Its purpose being to be a to be continued. I think I got more emotional about those closing River Songs scenes, the Paternoster gang, and particularly the first death of Jenny, of the many deaths of Jenny. But this one, while I wasn't that necessarily emotionally invested with individual scenes, it's a far more satisfying to be continued moment that it builds up to. I think it more coherently builds up to that climax point here than perhaps Name of the Doctor achieved. For an episode, I would say that its whole purpose is to tease you into the season finale. It does it just spectacularly well.
That is very true, but unfortunately what you've reminded me of is the fact that they the reprise, the way how do they get out of that at the beginning of the next story is one of the lamest of all time, isn't it? I mean, before Moffat did that whole thing of not even bothering to show you how they got out of that and just starting a different story the next week and 6 months later or whatever. I mean, don't they just grab...
It has a cold...
Grab Captain Jack, yeah.
It has a cold open with them landing in...
Yeah.
Them landing in 20th century Earth, and then we get it as flashback.
Yeah.
Or 21st century.
A bit unsatisfactory.
Concentrates on...
And I think that's why...
The election results.
The other thing I really remember is that the production... Back in the days when people used to care about this sort of thing, the production team said this was the part one of a 3-part story, when it's clearly a 1 and a 2. And I was annoyed because I used to care back then. Now I care about very little indeed. But I thought, you've got to muck up the numbering. It is not a 3-part story. We're going to have to overturn this decision. We're going to have to go to the European Court of Justice to get this overturned.
It feels like fandom hasn't listened to the production team, so I think it's righted itself. Yeah.
Oh, on many different bad ideas they've had, like season 5 being season 1.
Yeah.
Although they may have finally got their way with the current season 1, who knows? Time will tell.
Yeah. With the TARDIS, it always does.
And one of the characters that really appealed to me was Chanto.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Smashing.
I thought really played with a twinkle in their eye throughout. Some nice parallels to Martha and the Doctor. And a bit of a sad end for that character. That was one of the moments I thought, oh. And, if the Master wanted to prove just how awful he was, effectively finishing off the laugh of an entire species by killing Chanto was, a right statement of intent.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say killing off somebody really likeable.
And a likeable character, yes, yeah.
Which is... But I mean, yes, she is the embodiment of several Russell tropes. It's his idea of actually making alien characters behave in alien ways. Sometimes it's just with the naming, like those ludicrously long names that we got so many of. But
yes,
the speech, everything, the speech patterns, the incipient tragedy, it's all everything he likes in one neat package.
There's that lovely scene where the two, you've sort of mentioned it already, where the two, Martha and Chanto, talk to each other, and it's, there's discussion about unrequited friendship or love. It's not entirely clear, but there's that sense of human relationships aren't equal on both sides. Some nice to talk about language as well. So I suppose that scene and the other one you've mentioned between the Doctor and Jack, those are nice, moments where the thing takes a breath to explore something a bit more philosophical, perhaps.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's that thing that it feels like, for me, these are always some of my favourite stories because it feels like they just about reached that perfect point because the show was such a phenomenon at around this time. They could rely on people having a shared familiarity with these things, and you could call back to it. Okay, they do stick in a flashback here and there, which I don't object to when it's the different stories and so on. But I think you can then have lengthy conversation between the Doctor and Jack about past shared history, which is from unresolved plot points from 2 years ago, and rely on people knowing. Because again, it's that thing about which I think we lost these days, but at the time we had this saturation coverage of the show, not only because we were getting so much and it was highly rated, but also we had constant BBC Three repeats. Like it was just churning, they were just churning through, and you would just soak it up, and it was I think it was in the zeitgeist in a way that even being at the push of a button on iPlayer, it's not quite the same as stumbling across it and then being reminded of these things just because you've gone past one of the channels and there it is again. And I think personally for me, it just hits the right sweet spot in that regard, that it's continuity. It's engaged with continuity, but it's not laden down by it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it can, although it's quite a slight story, 45-minute story, and the story itself is pretty basic, but you can bring all this extra weight to it because you can call back to all of these things from the past 3 years and have people discussing that kind of thing, and it gives it a lot more heft.
One of the weirder aspects of that continuity was how Captain Jack has been spending his time when he has a clear objective, which is to bump into the Doctor.
Yes.
So he's had 100 years at it, and then the 70s and the 80s come along.
But
the Doctor's round every corner in the 70s and 80s. And then having spectacularly avoided him during 10 to 20 years of alien invasions and the presence of UNIT, etc., he chooses to spend the 90s stalking a very, very young Rose Tyler. That's a rather sinister way to spend your Saturday afternoon.
That's true, yes. But he does have the line about, I had to live through the entire 20th century waiting for a version of you that would coincide with me. I took that as a nod that he had to wait for post the hand, his Doctor detector thing would only be triggered by a post. Okay, now this is me thinking off the cuff, but I'm
enjoying it.
I was thinking, okay, maybe he just had the awareness of bugging up timelines and things like that. That he, having not met the Doctor in the past, in his past incarnations, he had to wait for 10 to turn up.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that he just wanted to avoid one of the Doctors who was going to be spectacularly rude to him, but unfortunately that didn't work out very well.
No. But now I'm thinking, okay, you could probably hand wave it away with some explanation of why the Doctor detector only works on post Christmas invasion.
You Doctors. Just made me realise I was wrong. I was about to say how clever it was, well, not clever, but the great effort Russell went to have Jack bring the hand with him and to explain why he brought it with him because of the Doctor detecting properties of it. But really, it was because it was needed in the next story. And then I just remembered that it's not the next story where it comes in. It's a whole series later, isn't it? So what? Can somebody remind me what happens to it?
Is it? I can't.
Between? Does the Doctor keep it in the TARDIS for the next? So it's in there when does Jacoby take it in there?
Yes,
and then it stays there for the next series.
It's in the TARDIS. You get a shot of Sim looking at it just after he's regenerated. Does it come up? Does he not use it in Lost of Time Lords or something?
No idea, mate. I'm far too old to retain that sort of information in my head. He must do, mustn't he? Because he wouldn't have been planning ahead for that preposterous usage of it
No,
in the Stolen
don't think
Earth.
so.
It's lovely when Jacobi becomes the master. I mean, it feels to me like he is, unlike most masters we get in the new series. He's got more of the sort of Delgado menace rather than the kind of manic energy. And for me, he kind of sells it to me within whatever he's got, 90 seconds or maybe slightly longer.
Yeah.
Could probably have done with a little bit more. I mean, I can see why you can't have him for very long because you'd just be holding the plot back. But yes, for however long we get, it's a great performance.
Yes, of course. Big Finish have now endlessly mined that incarnation, and I have not listened to any of them. I was wondering whether anyone around the table had.
Big what? No, I haven't. No.
No, I was wondering. It's one of those things again. It's just like liking gaps, and yeah, I know there are answers out there, but like I quite like because I was about to raise the question of we're left with this ambiguity about quite how much of So when was this master fob watched into? Like, is the story of being found as a child on the shores of the Silver Devastation true? Or
I guess that's the simplest explanation, that isn't true. It's a false memory, and the fob watch, the way we see the fob watch used in not Joe Martin's first episode, but in the season finale, suggests that it can go along with an entire false memory, doesn't it?
Yes.
Although, having said that, is that in human nature as well?
Yes,
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's built into it from the beginning, is it?
Yeah, John Smith has got false memories. Yeah.
Yes, that's the explanation.
Sydney and Verity.
John Sim, in his very brief appearance, I don't know whether this is just me, but he was giving me kind of Gav Rymil vibes. So yeah, I don't know if Gav's got a potential future career there, but yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah, John Sim was an interesting casting because it was so close to Life on Mars and Ash to Ashes. He was so firmly in my mind in that role. It was a shocking adjustment I needed to make.
Yes. Well, he wasn't really known for that sort of acting, was he? That sort of thing.
No.
But he's so wonderfully manic in that first scene that he does his best to shake that image of himself and say, "This, I am the master. This is my embodiment of it." And it was needed, I think, certainly for me as a viewer, to see that at the end of that episode as a kind of a reset that took me into the two-parter.
I watched about the first 5 minutes of the two-parter just straight after. Just let it roll on, and really love all that stuff because of the gas and all of that, all that malarkey. But yes, it was something of a jolt because we knew him as a quite serious and sort of rounded, witty actor. Complete non sequitur, but I do quite like the fact that Jana's outfit is probably the most self-consciously doctorish outfit that we've seen anyone wearing up until this point. So I think in the new series, like old school doctorish. Apparently, because I didn't spot the fob watch being worn throughout, but apparently inspired by the fact that they wanted to have he had to be wearing something that could allow him to hide the fob watch in plain sight.
Yeah. So I really liked Utopia. I enjoyed watching it again, despite the fact I can't watch it for the first time ever again. And so I seem to get a different kind of enjoyment out of Utopia. And to the point that we made before, wholeheartedly, even though people will want me to think of this as the first of a trilogy of episodes, it was quite satisfying just to watch it on its own.
Yeah, it is. Satisfying. But there is a version of it out there where it is perfect, where it's transcendent, because the differential between its weakest plot and all the wonderful stuff that it gets so right is so vast to me that I'd rather want to excise that plot and have it as a sort of chamber piece with just a very few characters. Can't have that because it's very important that it sets up the remnants of humanity setting off in their rockets, so they do need to be there. But if they're just replaced people, the tattoo people, with something, almost anything else. But it's. I know it's not what it's about, but go hard or go home. It should have. It's self-defeating to.
Well, they nearly had quad bikes, which would have been even more Blake 7.
Oh my goody aunt. Anyway,
I had a complete false memory that they did have quad bikes.
you're thinking of. Was it Star Drive in season 4 of Blake 7? Where
Yes.
the punk aliens with the spiky hair. Oh, God almighty. I love Blake 7. But I don't want Doctor Who to be Blake 7. That's the fundamental point.
So it was watched by 7.3 million viewers. In fact, a few more when they took time shifting into account. So very similar, I suppose, to Colony in Space. Although this made it the 4th most watched programme on BBC One for the week, which was probably a bit higher than Colony in Space. Appreciation index of 87, whatever that means.
Over the days when AI only meant appreciation index.
Yeah.
The DWM poll has it 11 out of 36.
Oh, wow.
10th Doctor stories. But controversially,
Yes.
it's the 3 episodes that
they put them together.
graded.
You say they were so under the thumb of the production team in that, but that's Tom Spilsbury for you. What a teacher's pet. I bet he would have agreed with us secretly if we'd get him down the pub, which indeed we did. But, yeah. When was that? Sorry, at the time? Or
No, that was in the latest poll.
They still count as a 3-parter now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I'm not going to sleep tonight.
What do they call story A?
Yeah. I find it so hard to have an opinion about all those 3 together. There's so much about them that I'm sort of plus and minus about. I think I would put Utopia up reasonably high. I'm not sure I would put all 3 of them together up as high because of the whole kind of Dobby Doctor thing. But anyway, we'll come to that in due course when we talk to that.
I knew you were going to say that. Well.
I'll just say one other thing.
Yeah.
I watched this on iPlayer and I got it up on the telly, on my actual telly on the wall. And I'm not sure whether it's just something to do with my telly settings or whatever, but it seemed to completely remove any filmized effects on this or any kind of atmospheric thing. And it looked very much like old school, in 1980s Doctor Who. It was just
So where did you watch it? iPlayer or
through iPlayer? Yeah,
right. So I did. So
on my TV. If I watch it on my laptop, and I got it up and started watching and watched the snippet on my laptop for comparison, and that looked how I expected it to look.
You haven't got the smoothing turned on your television, have you? Steve Roberts
it may be
down
something.
like a type. I assume you'd have noticed by now.
He'll be knocking at the door. It must be something. It must be something like that. It was very, very disconcerting. But seeing
Did it look like Hollyoaks?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's how you can tell.
Right, time to get into the settings of my telly before Steve Roberts does.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my only other thought about this.
Don't get me started on the soundbar.
Yeah, nitpicking was this was what was the radiation thing all about, and why does when one guy just gets completely vaporized by the radiation, why is Jack able to cope with it? I mean, it's fine that he keeps coming back to life, but wouldn't he just keep dying and coming back to life in endless loop rather than being perfectly okay?
It is almost as ludicrous a use of radiation, and I'm not a scientist, that man down there is, as colonies in space, where this intergalactic super weapon, the best way to put it out of action is to blow it up.
Yeah.
And then the radiation that has been leaking into the soil will miraculously clear up overnight, and the soil will be fertile again.
Yeah. In a former incarnation, I worked on nuclear power stations, but anyway, I won't... I agree with your point entirely.
A former incarnation?
Yeah. Yeah, it was when I was Joe Martin. Links.
I was going to say we were primitive a priest or one of those little yeah.
So links here. I mean, I've got War Games in colour, if only because you've got the TARDIS sound is the same in War Games as it is in Colony in Space. You've got all the Time Lord stuff which comes in both, and then you've got the master music that they've dubbed into the War Games in colour as well from Utopia. So yes. I mean, I wouldn't have thought about it if I hadn't just watched it, but it is a tenuous link between the two stories.
I have plenty.
Yeah.
I'm possibly going to persuade you we've been watching the same story twice. Some are blatantly obvious. Both stories contain the master pretending to be somebody he isn't.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Both are a colony in space.
Yep.
Both involve those colonists being under siege by locals and infiltrated to their detriment. Both feature a broken spaceship and a general sense that they've lost their engineering knowledge of how to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Both stories have the Doctor and the Master exchanging knowledge and ideas in quite a collaborative and in some ways sweet way.
Mm-hmm.
A TARDIS is stolen in both stories.
Yeah.
One more dramatically than the other. There's an argument to say that the breaking and entering of TARDISes in both stories, and a reiteration that really the protection of a TARDIS door is just a bloody Yale key and a latch lock on the other side. And I was hugely entertained by the Doctor dropping a Yale key in front of the Master's TARDIS in Colony in Space for it to be found to rescue Jo. And there's layers of Time Lord continuity in both, which is relatively rare even for a Doctor and Master story. And both stories have a contemporary Earth opener to set the scene for the main adventure.
Yeah.
They're the same story. It's the same story.
Yeah.
Mic drop, yeah.
Blimey.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're both filmed in quarries.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've also got refugees who are chasing a utopian dream.
Yep.
The TARDIS gets moved in both of them, by hand. I mean, I mean, yours are much better, Rick. I've just got one or two others, but yeah.
No, I'm enjoying yours.
We've got two alien races in each of them. We've got Chanto and the future kind, and we've got the primitives, if we're going to call them that, and the Guardians. I mean, are the priests and the Guardians the same? They look kind of the same. I'm suggesting they're the same. Just one's a bit smaller than the other.
I'm convinced. And the quarries, by the way. Don't forget the quarries.
Yeah, and in fact, also,
and Graham Marber.
The natives are very hungry because the primitives, Uxarians, they do anything for food, and the future kind keep telling us how hungry they are.
Yeah, brilliant.
Good pairing, Rick.
Yeah, somebody else's turn next time.
We done?
We done.
I can't think of. Yeah, I can't come up with anything else to
cool.
beat that.
Brill. Okay, well, look, thanks for listening to Something Who. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate and review our podcast. Please let us know what you liked about it too. If you go to our feed, there's plenty of other episodes for you to listen to while you're waiting for the next one to land, and they're numbered in the most confusing manner possible. Also, if you like Something Who, please tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, your neighbours, anyone you can bring to our outpost. But if you hate us, don't tell a soul. And we're aiming to make new Something Who recordings about once a month. But it's just a fun thing we do in our spare time, so please be patient with us if it takes a little longer. We hope to be back soon with more thoughts on Doctor Who, old and new. But in the meantime, thank you, all of you. I just waited until Rick took a very large slurp of tea, if that's what it was. But thanks all of you for taking part.
Fantastic.
Buy my new Big Finish story.
Woohoo!
The Lords of Misrule audio novels range, available now from all good... Well, actually, it's only available from the Big Finish website now. I come to think of it. I'm told it's 7.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
Pure audio goodness.
It's even longer than the War Games.
Yep. and nobody's going to be colorizing it anytime soon.
Well, great.
Mm,
Yeah, we should definitely direct people to do that. That's great.
indeed, yeah.
It's got Jago and Lightfoot in it. So I haven't stopped talking yet.
Go on.
John Coleshaw brings to life the fourth Doctor Tom Baker in his usual inimitable fashion, but also he premieres his impersonations of Jago and Lightfoot, which I'm sure are excellent. I've heard Jago in the trailer, and that was a treat. I don't imagine his Romana 1 is up to much, but but you can't expect miracles.
Well, I mean, he can do the whole northern thing, can't he? Not that she was particularly the accent. Yeah, brilliant. And Rick, Lego exhibitions.
Yes. 26th of January in Mythenroyd, Calder Valley Brick Show. And that will, amongst other things, have my Quatermaster Pit model.
Ooh.
And then at the end, last weekend of February, is Bricktastic, which is at Manchester Central or whatever that huge old railway station is called these days. And that is a monstrously huge and very enjoyable Lego display. Got just hundreds of stalls at it. And I imagine tickets are available for both events.
Excellent.
Indeed.
You can go to both.
I will be.
Yeah, I have nothing to plug this month.
Well, neither do
Richard? No? Okay.
I'm still in awe of your Spin to Survive book, Giles, having seen it in the real. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
It was fun. Yeah.
Have you had good feedback about it, Giles?
I've had very little feedback about it, I have to say, but that's publishing for you. If you don't hear, no news is good news, usually.
If you haven't heard anything, I'm going to say it, Giles. It looks great. I had a good
thank you.
flick through it. Bookshop.
Well, I guess what I could say is, since we've mentioned it about half a dozen times, there is a discussion with Rich Tipple and Ben Cook about the War Games in Colour, which is on our feed. If you haven't listened to it yet, you might feel provoked to listen to it from this discussion.
Provoked to listen to it.
Not inspired.
Inspired? Yeah, perhaps that too. Forced, cajoled. Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Our episode numbering system is even more perverse than DWM's take on which stories are two-parters versus one-parters versus three-parters.
Well, these are the people who call the first story 100,000 BC, aren't they? So they can.
I was going to say, what do they call the first story?
Missing.
Call it whatever you want. It can't hear you.
Excellent.
Right. Okay. That seems like
I'm
a
going to
good,
call it.
good cue to stop my recording.
Nope, it's gone.